Good morning. Just past 8 by the clock. We are back again with another edition of Breakfast News. This is your Power Pack, 60 minutes of action early in the morning. Your first comprehensive news package where we get you all the events that took place over the day. And we look forward to the day ahead, the action-packed day that we have on all the meetings and all the other events that are lined up. Also taking a look would be the action, especially when it comes to politics, sports, entertainment, and lots to look forward to in the world of sports with the Junior Hockey World Cup starting. I'm Anil Thomas to get started this morning, along with me, my co-anchor Shubhendu.
Thanks very much, Anil. Good morning and welcome to Breakfast News. This is, of course, the day's first comprehensive news roundup. In the big stories today, we'll be looking at the revival of India-US trade ties, trade policy in particular. Also, important progress made on the COVID vaccination front. 118 crore mark has been crossed as far as doses delivered are concerned. Also, inclement weather in Tamil Nadu, Kerala. We'll take stock of that, all that and more. First, the top stories.
External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar meets Catherine Tai, the US trade representative, discusses global trade challenges and the need to build reliable and resilient supply chains, says expanding economic and technology cooperation is at the heart of our strategic partnership.
India administers more than 118 crore 35 lakh COVID-19 doses, more than 68 lakh 35,000 vaccine doses administered in just last 24 hours.
India to release 5 million barrels of crude oil from its strategic reserves as part of a coordinated move along with US, China, Japan and South Korea. The move aimed at lowering international oil prices.
Union Minister Nitin Gadkari to lay the foundation stones of 25 national highways projects of length 250 kilometers with an investment of over 11,700 crore in Jammu and Kashmir today.
US invites over 110 countries to a two-day virtual democracy summit, excludes China, Russia, Turkey, Afghanistan. The summit to be held on the 9th of December.
In sports, Junior Hockey World Cup begins today in Bhubaneswar. Defending champion India locks horns with France in today's match.
Manchester United and Chelsea become the latest sides to seal their places in the knockout stage of the UEFA Champions League. Manchester qualifies for the stage with a 2-0 win over Villarreal, while Chelsea defeat Juventus in another high-profile clash. Well, those were the top stories. Now for the stories in detail, starting first up with the India-US trade representatives meeting, and after a 4-year, a deadlock being broken.
That's right. The United States and India on Tuesday revived their trade policy forum after a gap of 4 years. It last met in 2017. They agreed to continue to work together on resolving outstanding trade issues, including World Trade Organization disputes between the two countries. US and India also exchanged views on potential targeted tariff reductions. Tuesday's talks sought to integrate their economies across sectors and move towards securing an ambitious future for trade relations between the two strategic partners and fellow democracies. Here's more.
India and the United States held the 12th ministerial level meeting of their Trade Policy Forum in New Delhi on Tuesday. Commerce and Industry Minister Piyush Goyal and US Trade Representative Catherine Tai co-chaired it. The meeting followed the talks between Prime Minister Narendra Modi and US President Joe Biden in Washington, D.C. on 24th September. Prime Minister Modi and President Biden had spoken about the need to develop an ambitious shared vision for the future of the trade relationship.
We have been uniquely tasked, Madam, by our leaders, Prime Minister Modi and President Biden, to strengthen our economic ties and trade based on the rules of transparency and fair trade. The world coming out of COVID-19 has taught us many lessons. just like the US has embarked on a Build Back Better program, India is working on an Atmanirbhar Bharat, a self-confident, a self-reliant India, wishing to expand our engagement with the rest of the world, opening our doors even wider for international engagement, greater trade, greater economic ties.
The US agreed to consider restoration of India's beneficiary status under the US Generalized System of Preferences program. The GSP, under which exporters of particular products from India got duty-free market access into the US, was withdrawn when Donald Trump was in power.
Our trade policy forum was languishing for 4 years. I'm delighted that we have been able to rejuvenate it. It's only the beginning of a new chapter in our trade relations. But I do hope together we can revitalize it to engage and resolve outstanding issues in an amicable manner and send a strong message to the entire world that the US and India are stronger partners than ever before.
A joint statement issued towards the end of the talk said India and the US agreed to reactivate the working groups on agriculture, non-agriculture goods, services, investment and intellectual property, continue working to expand bilateral trade in agriculture and food products, adopt an agreement to finalize work on market access facilitation for mangoes and pomegranate arils from India, and cherries and alfalfa hay for animal feed from the US, and work to complete India's request for table grapes access to the US, while India agreed to work to finalize a mutually agreed export certificate to allow import of US pork and pork products.
The trade relationship between our two countries is a top priority, both for President Biden and for me. That's why it was important for me to come to India and relaunch the Trade Policy Forum on my first trip to Asia. There is a huge potential for growth between our two economies in areas like the digital economy, services, health-related trade, and yes, even agriculture. I believe that a revived TPF can help our trade relationship keep pace with other important aspects of the US-India partnership.
The US and India also decided to talk about visa issues and movement of skilled workers. The US also agreed to continue discussions on a social security totalization agreement. Bureau Report, DD India.
Well, Union External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar held meeting with US Trade Representative Ambassador Thai. In a tweet, he said, and I quote, "Good conversation on global trade challenges and the need to build reliable and resilient supply chains. Expanding economic and technology cooperation is at the heart of our strategic partnership." Well, India's COVID-19 vaccination coverage has crossed the 118 crore landmark milestone. Cumulatively, 118 crore 35 lakh 73,646 beneficiaries have been inoculated so far. More than 68 lakh 35,000 vaccine doses were administered till Tuesday. That's the 312th day of the vaccination program.
Meanwhile, India and Nepal have reciprocally recognized each other's vaccination certificate to ease travel between them. An MOU in this regard was signed by Indian Ambassador to Nepal, Vinay Mohan Quatra, and Nepal Secretary of Ministry of Health and Population, Dr. Roshan Pokhrel, in Kathmandu on Tuesday. The Indian Embassy described the MOU as a significant step in easing travel for fully vaccinated travelers of both the countries. It marks another milestone in robust COVID-19 related cooperation and coordination between India and Nepal.
President Ramnath Kovind will be on a two-day visit to Uttar Pradesh from today. He will grace the birth centenary celebrations of Chaudhry Harmohan Singh Yadav today. He will also address on the occasion. Tomorrow, the President is scheduled to grace the centenary celebrations of Harcourt Butler Technical University. Harcourt Butler Technical University, or HBTU, is a premier state technical university situated in Kanpur. The HBTU was named after Sir Spencer Harcourt Butler, the governor of the United Provinces in British India, and is one of the oldest engineering institutes in the country. He will also address the event.
On to some weather updates. Torrential rain accompanied by floods have battered southern states of the country in the last couple of weeks. In Kerala, some parts have experienced isolated heavy rainfall on Monday. Yellow alert has been issued for 6 districts today. As per the IMD, a low pressure area may develop today in Bay of Bengal. Under its influence, rainfall is likely to intensify in South India, including Kerala. Isolated heavy rains are also expected in the next 5 days in the region, including Kerala. To maintain the agreed water levels, 5 shutters have been opened in Mallaperiya Dam. Overall, 8 dams in Idukki and Pathanamthitta districts are currently in red alert for opening.
In Tamil Nadu, IMD has issued a yellow alert till today. The agency has issued an orange alert for November 25th and 26th due to a cyclonic circulation that lies over the southeast Bay of Bengal. It is forecast that the system is very likely to move west-northwestwards towards Tamil Nadu coast and bring heavy rainfall during the next 4 to 5 days. Crops spread over more than 50,000 hectares and over 2,300 houses have been damaged in the incessant rainfall that lashed several districts of Tamil Nadu in the last 2 weeks. Reservoirs in the state are overflowing as excess water from catchment areas in neighboring states have aggravated the crisis. Meanwhile, 2 central teams inspected the worst hit areas including Chennai, Cuddalore, Ranipet and the delta districts of Nagapattinam, Tanjavur and Tiruvayur, besides Puducherry, to assess the damage over the last 2 days. Tamil Nadu had earlier urged the centre to grant a total of 2,629.29 crores, including 549.63 crores towards short-term measures from the National Disaster Relief Fund to carry out various relief measures in the wake of heavy showers in the state. Tamil Nadu has received 61% excess rainfall during the ongoing northeast monsoon.
And our colleague Philip Nathi joins us from Chennai with more updates. Philip, good morning. If you can first take us through a broad assessment of the kind of damage that has happened in the state due to the incessant rains and the relief work undertaken.
Well, as I mentioned earlier, around 50,000 hectares of crops have been damaged in various districts, especially in the delta districts of, Nagapattinam, Tanjavur, Tiruvayur and Mailadurai. This is the granary of the state. So these areas and the district of Kanyakumari have borne the brunt of the heavy rains over the last couple of weeks. Of course, there has been a brief break in between for the last couple of days, but it's expected, the rains are expected to pick up in the next 4 to 5 days as a new system has now emerged in the Bay of Bengal, close to the Sri Lanka coast. And that is expected to move towards South Tamil Nadu and North Andhra Pradesh over the next 4 to 5 days.
Also, bring us a best, especially when it comes to the loss of lives in the southern state of Tamil Nadu. Has there been an increase, especially in the numbers, and how are the rescue and relief operations going on there? Considering the fact that there have been alerts issued.
Well, there have been reports of house collapses. In fact, 4 people died in Salem district last night yesterday due to a house collapse. So there have been reports coming in of house collapses, but thankfully the casualties have been low because the authorities have taken efforts to ensure that those in vulnerable areas are moved to safer places. Relief camps have been opened up all over the state, including in the capital, Chennai. In Chennai, for example, with low-lying areas, pumps have been installed in most of the low-lying areas to ensure that water is pumped out quickly and stagnation of water is avoided once the rains come pelting down. But for the moment, the authorities say they are geared up. They provided boats to certain areas which are perennially affected by rainwater, so that people can be evacuated quickly in case their help is required. The State Disaster Response Force and NDRF teams are also in location in various places in anticipation of further rains. But given the fact that Tamil Nadu has been facing very heavy showers for almost 2 weeks now, the authorities are already on the job. So for the moment, at least, as I said, due to the break that the state has witnessed over the last couple of days, it has given some breathing time to the authorities to put a contingency plan in place to ensure that there is no further loss of life.
Right. And Philip, finally, in view of the ongoing yellow alert in the state, what is the kind of direction given out to people in the state and those planning to visit?
Well, people have been advised not to step out unnecessarily and to stay at home unless their own homes are at risk of flooding or collapse. Also, the people in those living in low-lying areas have been asked to move to safer places, and the authorities have also been alerted, to ensure that necessary steps are taken. The possibility of trees falling as well as croplands being flooded still remains, and these are the basic areas of concern as far as the authorities are concerned. But the authorities say that they are taking necessary steps to ensure that any threat to life or property is kept to the bare minimum.
Also, Philip, we were going through the report, 61% of excess rain, but when do we expect this to end? Is this wet spell expected to, take us through the whole of November, especially in Tamil Nadu?
Well, most weather experts say that the climate, the climate, especially in the southern states, has taken, an extreme turn in the last couple of years. There are increasing spells of heavy rain followed by, spells of drought, and this could be attributed to climate change. And in fact, the number of occasions, systems have developed in the Bay of Bengal. The frequency with which they have developed has increased over the last couple of years. And that weather watchers attribute that to climate change and the impact of environmental degradation. So this is something that they say both the southern states, in particular Tamil Nadu and Andhra Pradesh, will have to watch out for in the coming years. And they say these kind of weather systems are likely to continue to develop at least for the next couple of months till early January.
Okay, we'll leave it there, but expecting and praying for no more loss of lives, especially in the southern states that's been battered there by monsoon mayhem that's hit them almost for 1 month now. Whereas when you head up north, you've got the cold wave that's biting cold, especially right. Srinagar recording its coldest night there last night. Especially when it comes to dropping temperatures.
Absolutely, Anil. And from natural disasters, let's talk about the man-made ones. The Supreme Court is scheduled to continue hearing pollution cases today. In the previous hearing, the top court refused to pass any harsh orders regarding the Delhi toxic air and has asked the Delhi government to take steps to ensure that the condition improves. As the national capital breathes poison, Supreme Court will discuss with Delhi government some permanent solutions to curb the situation. Meanwhile, Delhi government will review its decision on reopening of schools and educational institutions considering improvement of air quality levels. Apart from decision on reopening schools and colleges, review meeting will decide on the ongoing work from home facilities among several other factors. Education Department earlier on 14th November instructed to shut down all private and government schools, colleges and other educational institutions till further notice.
Meanwhile, the national capital, Delhi, has witnessed a slight improvement in the air quality this morning. According to the System of Air Quality and Weather Forecasting and Research, or SAFAR, under the Ministry of Earth Sciences, the air quality index in Delhi was recorded at 280 early this morning, which falls under the poor category. People in the sensitive groups have been advised to reduce prolonged or heavy exertion and to take more breaks and do less intensive activities. The asthmatics have been advised to keep medicines ready if symptoms of coughing or shortness of breath occur. Well, for more on this story, we've got Vikas Sarthi joining us this morning. Vikas, especially when it comes to the pollution problems that Delhi is facing, Delhi's air pollution is a non-starter, especially, or a non-brainer, if one could put it that way. Every year we see the same problems, but we don't see any solutions, arriving either from the governments or from the courts.
Right, Anil, what we have seen in last 7 years that every time the Supreme Court has to advise Delhi government and central government to put some immediate measures or short-term measures. Though the court has been hearing this matter for almost a decade now, but still, what have we seen in the first week of November, we see this problem each and every year. In fact, this time also Supreme Court asked Delhi government to come up with the short-term measures, what it can do immediately, instead of giving a detailed plan of a long-term solution. So the Supreme Court is of the view that unless court pulls up the authorities, they don't take any kind of decision, they don't take any steps. In fact, court on the previous hearing pulled up the authorities that only after the intervention of the Supreme Court, the government convened a meeting to chalk out the plan for improving the air quality index of Delhi NCR. So yesterday we saw a kind of improvement, but it is hard to say whether it is because of the steps taken by the government or the credit should be given to the moderate winds what we have seen in the couple of days. Today also Supreme Court will ask Delhi government that what it has decided on short-term basis and what long-term plan they have to deal with this this perennial problem what we have been witnessing for almost a decade now.
Right, Vikas, also if you could take us through the immediate measures that have been taken in view of the high levels of pollution in the air, which may have contributed in improving the situation a little for now.
Well, Shubhendu, in fact, Supreme Court asked Delhi government to think over on work from home solution. Though this suggestion was given both to the center as well as the Delhi government, but center was of the view that their employees are minuscule in comparison with the other people, like the people employed with Delhi government or private firms. So center was of the view that it can advise carpooling or vehicle pooling to its employees, but work from home for central government employees is not necessary. Delhi government decided that it will direct work from home for few weeks, and what we are seeing, Shubhendu, as of now, it is very hard to say whether it is the outcome of the active decisions by the government or we should give this credit to the winds that we have seen yesterday. We saw moderate winds in Delhi NCR area. So the real problem, Shubhendu, here is the lack of data and lack of interpretation of that data. So it's hard to say whether these steps are responsible for any kind of improvement in the air quality index of Delhi.
Okay, we'll leave it there, but clearly a cause of concern there, Delhi's air pollution. Not only Delhi's air pollution, the whole Indo-Gangetic plain, if one looks at, and the death toll that comes from that particular region, especially when it comes to, breathing problems and, problems or death related to that particular issue, especially to pollution, is a cause of concern. I think the court this time around should come out hard, especially on the defaulters. Be it the farming community or for that matter any other people who are responsible for this mess that the people are facing.
Right,
well,
let's focus. Air quality improves, it's still in the poor category, which is quite worrisome.
Well, let's now shift focus and take a look at the next story there. The government has announced a Bharat Gaurav scheme following private tour operators to take trains on lease from the railways and run them on any circuit of their choice. Announcing the initiative, Railways Minister Ashwini Vaishnav said that the operators will have the freedom to decide tour routes, fares and the quality of service under a new scheme called Bharat Gaurav. The Railways has earmarked over 3,000 ICF coaches for this purpose, roughly translating to 150 trains. Anyone from societies, trust, consortia and even state governments can apply to take these trains and run them on special tourism circuits based on a theme.
रेगुलर ट्रेन सर्विस नहीं है, इसमें 5-6 एलिमेंट्स हैं. इसमें ट्रैवलिंग इज जस्ट वन ऑफ द 6 एलिमेंट्स. एक्सपीरियंस ऑफ दैट प्लेस, टैक्सी सर्विस, होटल सर्विस, फूड सर्विस, एंटरटेनमेंट ऑन बोर्ड, ये सारे एलिमेंट्स हैं. आप अपना टूरिज्म पैकेज अच्छे से आप उसको कंस्ट्रक्ट कर सकते हो और उसमें जितने भी एलिमेंट्स आपको चाहिए फ्रीडम के लिए, वो सारे एलिमेंट्स आपको प्रोवाइड हो. पीएम साहब का विजन ये था कि एक नॉर्मल टूरिस्ट ट्रेन नॉर्मल ट्रेन की तरह चले, तो उसका जो एक्सपीरियंस है उस एक्सपीरियंस को एनहांस कैसे किया जाए. वो एक्सपीरियंस एनहांस होता है अगर हम कोच को भी उसी डिज़ाइन में मॉडिफाई करते हैं. जिस थीम पे ट्रेन चलनी है भारत गौरव की, उस थीम के हिसाब से ट्रेन का मॉडिफिकेशन हम परमिट कर रहे हैं.
Meanwhile, Defence Acquisition Council headed by Defence Minister Rajnath Singh has approved a proposal of a value of worth rupees 2,236 crores under the category of Make in India. Indian Air Force will procure GSAT-7C satellite and ground hubs for real-time connectivity of software-defined radios. From design and development to launch, the satellite is to be completely made in India. It will enhance the ability of our armed forces to communicate beyond the line of sight in a more secure mode.
Union Minister for Road Transport and Highways Nitin Gadkari will lay the foundation stone of 25 national highway projects of 257 kilometers length in Jammu today with an investment of 1,721 crore rupees. These projects will provide all-weather connectivity between Jammu and Kashmir Valley. These are equally important for the rapid movement of defence forces along with the agricultural, industrial and socio-economic progress of the region. These projects will also create employment and self-employment opportunities along with connecting all the major roads leading to several district headquarters.
And Uttar Pradesh is poised to become the only state in India to have 5 international airports, as Prime Minister Narendra Modi will lay the foundation stone of Noida International Airport in Jewar, Gautam Budh Nagar, Uttar Pradesh tomorrow. The development of the airport is in line with the vision of Prime Minister towards creating a future-ready aviation sector. A special focus of this grand vision has been on the state of UP that is witnessing development of multiple new international airports. There is a lot of enthusiasm among local people about this airport being built in Jewar, and they are hopeful that after construction of this airport, development will also get momentum in the region.
Well, India strongly believes that the pricing of liquid hydrocarbons should be reasonable, responsible and be determined by market forces. India has repeatedly expressed concern at the supply of oil being artificially adjusted below demand levels by oil-producing countries, leading to rising prices and negative attendant consequences. India has agreed now to release 5 million barrels of crude oil from its strategic petroleum reserves. This release will happen in parallel and in consultation with other major global energy consumers, including the United States of America. Prime Minister Narendra Modi has been consistently reviewing the high petroleum diesel prices domestically, and in a bid to control inflationary pressure, Government of India had reduced the central excise duty on petrol and diesel by 5 and 10 rupees respectively on the 3rd of November this year. It was followed by a reduction in VAT on fuel by many state governments, and these steps were taken in order to provide relief to citizens. Well, for more on the story, we've got Arun Sharma joining us this morning. Arun, so finally, we see a global push to cap oil prices. Take us through, how this would work out, especially in, in putting some kind of pressures on oil-producing nations.
Absolutely, Anil. So it's a big move, a big decision, and a global coordinated effort to bring down the international oil prices. Now, we know this fact that there is an economic recovery taking place gradually post-COVID-19. And we've also seen this fact that because of this recovery, the international crude oil prices are increasing. But on the other side, the OPEC countries or the OPEC or the oil producing nations, they should increase the supply of the crude oil prices, or they should increase, the production of the international crude oil. But on the contrary, they are not taking any stance or decision to increase the supply of the crude oil prices. And that's the reason whereby the price rise or international surging of price rise takes place. So we have seen that now the international crude price is surging. It is because the OPEC members are not taking any decision or firm stance as far as increasing the output primarily. So that's the reason we have witnessed this international price rise, in the global market. So now countries like India, India has taken this big stance of releasing 5 million barrels of crude from its strategic reserve. Now, in a similar manner, USA, Japan, Korea for that matter, China for that matter, all these countries are coming together and they'll be using their strategic reserve primarily so that the global crude oil prices can be cooled off. So in that direction,
Right.
it's a big coordinated effort in that direction.
I don't know if you could also help us understand the significance of strategic reserves of petroleum as we understand it, and what does it mean to take the energy, the fuel from there and use it for domestic purposes?
Well, every country, Shubhendu, has its strategic reserve primarily. India also has its strategic oil reserve. Now, any country or any government uses this strategic oil reserve during the time of crisis or uncertain situation. So in that context, during that time, these strategic reserves are very much helpful. As of now, India has a strategic reserve of approximately 40 million barrels or so, and out of which 5 million barrels will be released to the refiners primarily. So what will happen primarily, the Indian refiners who were importing the oils from other countries or the oil producing countries earlier will, as of now, for a short period of time, will not have to import the crude from the international market or from the other countries. They'll be using the crude oil from the strategic reserve of the government. And not only in India, various other countries are also coming forward. USA for that matter, China, Japan, Korea for that matter. So in such a huge number, or in such large number primarily when the countries are coming together, when such massively strategic reserves are being used, so this will, number one, will ensure that international prices do cool off gradually next 15 day or so. Second, India is the third largest consumer internationally as far as the crude oil prices are concerned. So in that context, primarily, it will create a massive pressure on the oil OPEC members as well as to as the international prices will start to cool off. Number three, the petrol and diesel prices in India will gradually come down in next 15 days or so, because earlier we have seen that the central government has slashed the excise duty on petrol and diesel. After that, we saw that the state governments came forward and they also slashed the VAT that they used to charge on petrol and diesel. And now, this big move by the central government to use the 5 million barrels of the crude oil from its reserve. So ideally now the oil refiners like BPCL, HPCL, IOC, they will not have to import the crude, but on the other side, they'll be using the crude from the strategic reserve of the government. So 5 million barrel is a huge number primarily, and similarly other countries will also be using the strategic reserve. The oil refiners of other countries like Japan, Korea, USA will also be using the oil or the crude oil from their strategic reserve. This will ensure that how the global crude oil prices do cool off going forward. So yes, in that direction, it's a big move and a global coordinated effort as well.
Okay, Arun, I'll ask you to hold your thoughts there. Let's read the next story and come back to you for more updates on that particular story too. The US President Joe Biden has announced to release 50 million of barrels of oil from a US strategic petroleum reserve to boost domestic supplies. The White House is also probing possible illegal conduct by oil and gasoline companies, which has kept the gas prices artificially high. This move is being taken in parallel with other major oil-consuming nations, including Japan, South Korea, India and the UK. Meanwhile, Biden's administration, along with the Fed Reserve, has described the sharp spike in inflation earlier this year as transitory, but pressure for action has grown as the price surges have continued into the fall. The Labor Department's Bureau of Labor Statistics reported earlier this month that U.S. consumer prices in October posted their biggest annual gain in 31 years, driven by large jumps in the cost of gasoline and other goods.
And our colleague
that the largest ever release from the U.S. Strategic Petroleum Reserve to help provide the supply we need as we recover from this pandemic. In addition, I brought together other nations to contribute to the solution. India, Japan, the Republic of Korea, and the United Kingdom have agreed to release additional oil from their reserves, and China may do more as well. This coordinated action will help us deal with the lack of supply, which in turn helps ease prices. The bottom line, today we're launching a major effort to moderate the price of oil, an effort that will span the globe in its reach and ultimately reach your corner gas station, God willing.
There, and our colleague Arun Sharma continues to be with us. Arun, we just heard US President Joe Biden talking about this coordinated action globally to control the fuel prices. What kind of pressure is it likely to put on the global oil producing nations, and what kind of cascading effect on the prices are we likely to see with this step taken?
Well, absolutely, Shubhendra. So, two parts to your question. Number one, the pressure on the OPEC countries. Now, we have seen that OPEC, they are primarily not, coming forward and increasing the supply of the crude oil as of now, because after the COVID-19 pandemic, or you can say that in this post-COVID pandemic time, gradually the economies are recovering. And so the demand is also gradually increasing. But on the other side, the OPEC members are not looking at the fact that supplies of the oil-producing nations should be increased as far as the crude oil is concerned. So, primarily, monopoly of the OPEC members is playing a spoilsport as far as recovery is concerned globally. And inflation is something that has become a cause of concern, not only for developing economies like India, but for developed countries like USA as well. And that's the reason these countries are coming together. There is a global coordinated effort in that direction, to give a befitting reply to the monopoly or cartelization of these OPEC countries, because they are not listening to the non-OPEC members as to supply should be increased or production should be increased. So that primarily the prices can be cool off. Now, what exactly will happen if all these big economies, which are the major, consumers of the crude oil, when they start to use their strategic reserve primarily, when they start to use crude oil from their strategic reserve, this ensures that the oil refiners of their respective countries will not have to import crude for, say, like next 1 month. And trading on the international markets happen on a daily basis. So this will ensure that when there is no demand internationally, because all the major economies are using the crude oil from their strategic reserve, what primarily happens at an international market, primarily the demand will start to fall and the international prices will also start falling down. And that's the reason why all these countries are coming together, so that a befitting reply to the monopoly of these OPEC members can be given, because in this time of COVID recovery, they are not ensuring that there can be an increase in supply of crude oil prices concerned. On the contrary, they're restricting their supply side to very limited number so that the prices can increase and they can benefit their own economies, because their OPEC members' economy is completely dependent on the crude oil only. And that's the reason why there's a complete coordinated efforts against these OPEC members to primarily use the strategic reserve for next 15 days or so. So it's a big move you can consider in that way.
Okay, Arun, the threat of a coordinated release, from many countries in the world, along with this new coronavirus lockdown that you're seeing almost, holding the whole of Europe to ransom, does that somewhere, does that hold the possibility to knock the wind out of, especially, this OPEC nations' hard-handedness or high-handedness in handling this particular oil crisis?
So yes, COVID-19 pandemic we are witnessing in some of the European countries primarily. The numbers are popping up as far as the number of cases are concerned. But look at the statistical number, that international statistical number, the recovery. I mean, look at the big economies like India, Japan, China, Korea, the big Asian countries, primarily an economy like USA. They are in recovery mode. And these are the largest consumer of the oil prices. Even if this supply is increased from the OPEC countries' side, even if they're increasing supply, there is enough consumption that is happening in these big economies like USA, China, Japan, Korea, India for that matter. So when these when dozens of countries are there to consume things, because COVID-19 is popping up in some of the pockets in European countries. Now these European countries are not some big countries. They are small countries where COVID cases are increasing. But on the other side, a country like India, where economic recovery is massive, they're completely dependent on the crude oil prices for their energy needs. And of course, gradually India is also ensuring that how can we shift on the renewable sources of energy as well, like all the green energy primarily. So in that context, there has to be some stand. But yes, this decision by some of the countries like USA, India, Japan, Korea, and China for that matter, will of course put some pressure on the OPEC countries to be a little flexible. We know this fact that once the production is increased by the OPEC members, it is very much difficult for them also to reduce the production or to wind up their capacities as far as reducing the crude oil production. But yes, as we are now witnessing that the recovery is sharp in some of the economies, the demand is very much high in some of the economies. OPEC members should now be a little flexible, and they should ensure that supply should be increased. Production should be increased by the OPEC members so that the demand-supply mismatch is not there and the prices are a little low primarily, so that this also helps in economic recovery as well. So OPEC can't ensure that they're not flexible, but they'll have to give a hint now after this global coordinated effort that they will have to be flexible. We can witness or we can see a meeting of OPEC members. It can happen after this big move by India, USA, and other Asian countries as well.
Right there, Arun, thanks very much for joining us with those inputs. We'll have to wait and watch in the days ahead. How does this really play out in terms of the prices of fuel for people and the impact on the oil-producing nations? Let's now move on to some other stories. US President Joe Biden has invited around 110 countries in a virtual summit on democracy in December, including India, according to a list posted on the State Department website on Tuesday. China, United States' principal rival, is not invited, while Taiwan is, a move that risks angering Beijing. Turkey, which like America is member of NATO, is also missing from the list of participants. Among the countries of Middle East, only Israel and Iraq will take part in the online conference, scheduled for December 9th and 10th. Traditional Arab allies of the US, Egypt, Saudi Arabia, Jordan, Qatar and United Arab Emirates are not invited. Biden invited Brazil, even though its far-right president, Jair Bolsonaro, has been criticized as having an authoritarian bent and was a firm supporter of Donald Trump. In Europe, Poland was invited to the summit despite persistent tension with the European Union over its human rights record. Hungary, led by hardline nationalist Prime Minister Viktor Orban, was not invited. In Africa, Democratic Republic of Congo, South Africa, Nigeria, Niger are among the countries on the list.
Well, moving on to our next segment where we bring you stories from across the globe.
Let's take some updates on the COVID-19 front from across the world. COVID-19 cases are soaring in different parts of the world. The virus has so far infected more than 25 crore 89 lakh people, while the number of recoveries have crossed 23 crore 42 lakhs globally. COVID-19 has claimed over 51 lakh 82,000 lives worldwide. The US has been the worst hit country in the world since the beginning of the pandemic. US has over 4 crore 88 lakh cases and fatalities standing above 7 lakh 96,000. In the past few weeks, a massive surge in COVID cases is being seen in Europe. The United Kingdom has registered the highest number of cases in the continent. Virus has infected over 99 lakh people. France is also battling a surge in cases with over 74 lakh cases. More than 54 lakh people have been infected in Germany. Meanwhile, over 49 lakh COVID-19 cases have been reported in Italy.
Well, staying with the European continent, France has recorded more than 30,000 new COVID-19 infections in the last 24 hours for the first time since August, as per the Health Minister Oliver Véran. On Monday, when new cases typically dip due to the weekend, France reported 5,266 new cases, which is an increase of 63% over last week, pushing the 7-day moving average of new cases to nearly 18,500. A daily tally of 30,000 cases in France would be the highest since 30,920 cases were registered on August 8th, which was also the peak of daily new cases during the previous wave. The 7-day average fell back to 4,172 on October 9th, but since then it has been rising again with a daily average of over 9,000. The health minister says that it looks like France was seeing the start of a fifth wave of the pandemic.
And several countries in Europe held protests against COVID preventive curbs over the past few days. Damages remained visible in the streets of Guadeloupe on Tuesday, as government said the situation continues to be very difficult in the French island territory, where unrest erupted last week over COVID curbs imposed by Paris. Drone footage showed a barricade of nearly 24 burnt cars, some turned over, set up on a roundabout in the city of Petit-Bourg. The general strike entered into a second week in Guadeloupe on Monday, and many stores remain shuttered after nighttime looting, even though government has said 200 extra police officers deployed since Sunday have helped quell some of the unrest. French Prime Minister Jean Castex has called for calm in Guadeloupe. Gunshots were also fired overnight at the police in the neighboring French Caribbean island of Martinique, in a sign that unrest triggered by COVID curbs has rocked Guadeloupe could be spreading further.
Netherlands, meanwhile, has started transporting COVID-19 patients across the border to Germany on Tuesday to ease pressure on Dutch hospitals, which are scaling back regular care to deal with the surge in COVID-19 cases. The number of COVID-19 patients in Dutch hospitals has swelled to its highest level since May in recent weeks. On Tuesday, the country registered some 23,000 new infections in 24 hours, and the weekly number from the National Health Institute showed 1,53,957 new cases registered inside 7 days, a 39% rise compared to a week before. Dutch Prime Minister Mark Rutte urged people to follow new restrictions, which include return to social distancing guidelines and a partial lockdown, shutting down non-essential businesses. During opening hours, customers in restaurants have to present a QR code providing that they have been vaccinated or have recovered from the disease or have a recent negative test. The latest set of announcements prompted 3 nights of rioting across the Netherlands, with some of the worst violence in Rotterdam on Friday, leading to more than 170 arrests.
And Germany intensified efforts on Tuesday to get more people vaccinated against COVID-19 as the country's coronavirus infections hit another high. 7-day incidence rate jumped to 399.8 per 100,000 people on Tuesday. Data from Robert Koch Institute for Infectious Diseases showed 16th straight day it has hit a record level. In Cologne, the local arena used for concerts and sporting events was turned into a vaccination center, where people with an appointment could wait in their car until it was their turn. In eastern state of Brandenburg, that surrounds the German capital Berlin, the 7-day COVID-19 incidence rate stood at more than 600 on Tuesday. Christmas markets across the state will be cancelled, and those which already open, such as Potsdam, will have to close from today.
Well, Israel kicked off a nationwide campaign to vaccinate children aged 5 to 11 on Tuesday, hoping to beat down a recent rise in coronavirus infections. The country's HMO began rolling out the Pfizer-BioNTech COVID-19 vaccinations for children on Monday in several cities, but the campaign went nationwide on Tuesday. A fourth wave of infection that hit Israel in June began subsiding in September, but over the past 2 weeks, the R, or reproduction rate of the virus, that had remained below 1 for 2 months began climbing and has now crossed the threshold, indicating the virus could again be spreading exponentially. Daily cases have also crept up over the past few days, with half the confirmed infections presently among children aged 11 and younger. Israel's 9.4 million population is relatively young, with around 1.2 million children in the 5 to 11 age group. By November, that group comprised more than a third of the new cases, according to the Health Ministry data.
And New Zealand will keep its borders closed to most international travellers for a further 5 months, outlining a cautious easing of border curbs that have been in place since COVID-19 hit in March last year. Fully vaccinated international travellers will be allowed to enter the country from April 30th, 2022 onwards, with the reopening staged over time. Fully vaccinated New Zealanders and residence visa holders in neighbouring Australia can travel to New Zealand from January 16th, while vaccinated New Zealanders and residence visa holders, most from other countries, will be allowed in from February 13th. Meanwhile, travellers will no longer be required to stay at state quarantine facilities, but other measures will be put in place, including a negative pre-departure test, proof of being fully vaccinated, and a COVID-19 test on arrival.
Well, time now to move on to our next segment, where we get you the latest from the field of sports in Sports Track. Well, Odisha capital Bhubaneswar is all set to host the FIH Hockey Men's Junior World Cup at the Kalinga Stadium beginning today. The mega sporting event is scheduled to continue till the 5th of December. 16 teams from around the world are participating in this tournament, and defending champions India is placed in Group B along with Canada, France and Poland. Defending champions India will begin their campaign against France tonight. The last World Cup, held in 2016, was hosted by India in Lucknow, where India became the champions for the second time. Under the captaincy of Vivek Prasad, the 18-member team will land in Bhubaneswar with the intentions of defending the title, and India placed in Group B along with France, Poland and Canada. After France, India will play Canada on the 25th of November and Poland on the 27th. Belgium will play South Africa in the first game in Kalinga Stadium this evening.
And in football, Manchester United have recovered from poor form and made it to the knockout rounds of Champions League. Manchester United, playing their first match since the sacking of manager Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, defeated Spanish club Villarreal 2-0 to reach the last 16th. Neither team could score in the first half. However, in the second, Manchester United attacked the Spanish club. Ronaldo scored in the 78th minute to give Manchester a 1-0 lead. With this goal, Ronaldo has maintained the goal of scoring every match for Manchester United in the season of Champions League. On the other hand, Sancho scored a goal from Bruno Fernandes just before the end of the match to set up a 2-0 victory for the team. This was Sancho's first goal for Manchester.
UEFA Champions League defending champions English club Chelsea have made it to the knockout rounds of the Champions League. During the match played on Tuesday night, Chelsea defeated Italian club Juventus 4-0 to enter the last 16.
And it's 24th November today. Every day on Lead India, we bring you special stories on India's freedom struggle and the significance of the day in it. India's glorious freedom struggle is one of the greatest struggles the modern world has ever witnessed. In today's edition of Saga of Freedom, we talk about freedom fighter, educationist and first Chief Minister of the state of Rajasthan, Hira Lal Shastri. Shastri is known for leading the freedom movement by reorganizing Jaipur Rajya Praja Mandal. We'll also talk about freedom fighter Ghulam Ghaus Khan, who played a major role in the 1857 uprising. Here's more.
We celebrate the birth anniversary of freedom fighter, educationist and first Chief Minister of the state of Rajasthan, Hira Lal Shastri, who was born on the 24th of November 1899. Shastri is known for founding Jeevan Kutir in Banasthali area of Rajasthan and training social workers for rural reconstruction. He also led the freedom movement by reorganizing Jaipur Rajya Praja Mandal.
Hira Lal Shastri was born at Jobner in Jaipur district in a peasant family and completed his early education in Jobner. From early childhood, Hira Lal Shastri had a burning desire to go to a village and devote his life to the service of the downtrodden. He joined the Jaipur State Service in 1921 and became secretary in the Home and Foreign Departments. However, he resigned in 1927 and in 1929. In fulfillment of his childhood resolve, Hira Lal Shastri selected a remote and backward village, Banasthali, 45 miles from Jaipur, and founded Jeevan Kutir.
He trained a group of dedicated social workers and endeavored to implement a program of rural reconstruction. These workers later became the heralds of political awakening in many of the Rajputana states. Later, he was drawn to the political arena when he was drafted to reorganize Jaipur Rajya Praja Mandal in 1937, of which he was twice elected General Secretary and twice President. In 1939, he led the Praja Mandal's Satyagraha for achievement of civil liberties and suffered a 6 months imprisonment.
In 1947, Hiralal was appointed General Secretary of the All India States People's Conference. The same year, he was elected to the Constituent Assembly. On the installation of a representative government in Jaipur state in 1948, Hiralal Shastri took over as the Chief Minister. When Rajasthan state was formed on March the 30th, 1949, he became its first Chief Minister, and on him fell the Herculean task of integrating the diverse princely units into effective modern administration. He accomplished this complex task ably in a short period.
Hiralal Shastri passed away on the 28th of December 1974. Forthright and fearless in his views, an Indian to the core of his heart, a selfless social worker, Hiralal Shastri was a far-sighted and popular leader. Banasthali Vidyapith, founded by him, has today become a premier national institution for women's education. To him goes largely the credit of laying the foundation of a strong, unified and progressive Rajasthan. The Posts and Telegraphs Department brought out a commemorative postage stamp in honor of Pandit Hiralal Shastri in November 1976. We salute this great Indian and his love for his motherland.
We also remember freedom fighter Ghulam Ghaus Khan, who was a resident of Peer Gate, Mirapur, Muzaffarnagar, Uttar Pradesh. He joined the forces of his village against the British in the First War of Indian Independence in 1857. He was caught by the British troops during an engagement and charged with murder and rebellion against the British. He was sentenced to death and hanged in 1858.
And let's now scan through how the weather is going to be in the city and across the country. We take a look at the weather forecast. And heavy rainfall is very likely at isolated places over Tamil Nadu, Puducherry, Karaikal and Andaman and Nicobar Islands. Thunderstorm accompanied with lightning also likely at isolated places over coastal and south interior of Karnataka, Tamil Nadu, Puducherry, Karaikal, Lakshadweep, Kerala and Mahe. The onset of winter's dense fog is likely at isolated pockets over Assam, Meghalaya and Tripura in the northeast.
Well, that's all we have time for in this edition of news. But remember, this is not a trade-off that we are having, especially in the fight against COVID-19. So be careful in this festive season as we head into the new year, that if you have taken the jab, it gives you no protection against, catching or getting the virus back into your body. But one needs to be careful. One needs to follow those COVID-19 protocols, especially that simple steps of SMS, sanitize yourself, mask yourself, social distancing at all times. That could be a mantra to save yourself and your loved ones. And remember, if you've not got yourself the jab, please go ahead, get one now, because that could be one of the best gifts that you could give to your loved ones. Because if you get a jab, you do yourself not only a big good, but also the society at large. And if you and I get ourselves a jab, maybe we stand a better chance of seeing a better tomorrow.
Absolutely. And so be mindful of all COVID protocols, and plethora of colors and folk music and dance is what we're leaving you with. Tikse Gusta festival is celebrated in Tikse Monastery, a famous tourist attraction in Ladakh belonging to the Gelugpa sect of Tibetan Buddhism. As we conclude Breakfast News, we're leaving you with glimpses of this wonderful festival unique to this section of the region. Energize your Wednesday morning with these traditional mountain beats. We'll take your leave.
Bye-bye. Take care.